a lot of the times it can take a lot of the stress off.
That's right.
And that's what I figured out for myself. That's why I live in Bali, not only because I can surf here and I have sun all year long and I can go to the beach whenever I want. Not only because of that, that was the main reason. That was my dream since I'm a child, basically. But it's way more affordable to me, and it makes me able to save up and to build a studio and to do these things that I've dreamed of for less.
What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Qs podcast, talking about all things production and library music. It is so good to be back with you today in our normal, regularly scheduled programming. Of course, last week we had our live Q&A. Love doing those, and we're going to be doing another live Q&A here in the next few months. And we've been looking to do live events kind of every quarter. So we did a live Q&A. We're going to be doing Ready for Sync live in the next few months, and on June 6th, we are going to be doing another live podcast episode where we will be taking a listen to all of the submissions for the May Composer Quest, which is What is Your Superpower? And that's going to be live voting. That is June 6th at 4 p.m. Eastern, right here on YouTube. And so looking forward to that. We've got a fantastic show lined up for you today. We are going to be sitting down with fellow podcaster and Zen sync guru Roy Matz of the Sync Gems podcast. You don't want to miss this interview. We talked for quite a while, and this is going to be part one of a two-part episode. And so that is coming up a little bit later. And then at the end of the episode, I'm going to be unpacking or playing for you my final European dramedy cue. We've been listening to these for the last several weeks. This is called Light as a Feta, and that's going to be coming up a little bit later in today's episode. But first, a weekly check-in. How has my week gone? And the week is going really, really well. I've transitioned into a new project where I am now writing world hip-hop cues. See, when I got the contract to do 3 albums with the publisher that I work with Discovery Channel, it was decided that we wanted to do world, right? We wanted to experiment with fusing world elements. So the first album was world tension or cinematic world. So it was all like pulsing tension and action strings and that kind of thing. And that was 10 cues of that. Then 10 cues of world dramedy, and specifically European cafe dramedy, because the cinematic world was all kind of like Asian sounds, Indian sounds, Middle Eastern sounds, African sounds. And so I wanted to switch continents and do European dramedy, which was all Greek sounds or instrumentation, and French instruments and Italian instruments, or, the best I can fake with a melodica and a ukulele. And so for this final album, it is going to be world hip hop, borrowing from Middle Eastern, Asian instruments. And so that's starting up. But I realized that, especially with hip hop, because I spend so much of my world in epic orchestral hip hop, big high energy, big beats for sports and all of that, that I have to kind of step back, and I'm taking a very minimal approach with these next hip hop cues. And I've actually finished one already. It's called Take It on the Yang Chin. And maybe we'll listen to it next week. I don't know. I'm not terribly happy with it. And I was thinking, why am I not digging this? Because I put it together the way I put together nearly all of my other hip hop cues, but it just wasn't working for me. And I came to realize after doing some reference work of how simple, and I don't mean easy, I mean simple in arrangement, simple in layers and textures. I feel like I've just been throwing too much into some of these hip hop cues. And when you're doing big, high energy, epic hip hop cues for sports, you need that kind of energy. You need, multiple layers of drums, and you need big brass and big Brahms and horn stabs and staccato strings, and it needs to be really high energy, right? But for some hip hop that's going to go underneath dialogue that isn't necessarily accompanied with sports statistics or highlights, I think I need to pull the energy back and approach it a little bit differently. And so this whole week, I've been readjusting, reacclimating to those different types of references. Minimal instrumentation, which means that what's left has to do a heavier lift, which is one of the challenges of writing dramedy music, is you don't have all these layers to hide under when you go to create a sense of development in your arrangement. And so that was a real kind of eye-opening moment for me when I realized that I feel like I'm maybe throwing too much into these. And it manifested itself with my first cue on this album and not feeling it. Again, maybe I'll play it next week. We'll see. Maybe I will write something a little bit more simple and a little bit more straightforward. But that's been my takeaway, and that's how my week 20 of 2024 has been going. For today's main topic, we are welcoming Roy Matz to the podcast. He is the host of the Sync Gems podcast, and he is so chill. He is so zen. I love his vibe, and it's a totally different vibe from what I do here. This podcast is super kind of lecture-y. It's like hopefully feeling like you're sitting with a college professor, kind of vibe. And so it works for me. It's what I like to do. But I also get a lot out of different perspectives and different podcast hosts, especially in the same space. But Roy is so genuine and so authentic, so laid back and chill. It's inspiring. I am inspired by his podcast. And so in part one of this interview, we're going to be talking about how he transitioned from being a professional beatboxer into music production and what that growth and evolution looked like, how he transitioned careers, and how him pursuing his goals and setting his goals has led to the podcast, has led to him traveling the world, interviewing these really, really successful members of the production music industry, and how he comes away fulfilled in that process. So here is part one of my interview with Roy Matz. I got to be honest. I don't know how to start it, Roy. I mean, we've been talking.
That's
for
a
the
good
last,
start. That's
yeah,
a good start. Yeah.
We've been talking for like the last half hour, which we could have been recording this whole time.
We could have been recording.
Yep.
Yeah, I wish you had that thing like in Ableton where you can go back and basically it's like there's in Ableton you can retro do something. So basically, if you played it, you can play this button, and then it gives you all you played in the last how many ever.
Yeah, it's cycles. Like it's always recording in the background.
Yeah.
Logic has that. It's called a capture recording, and that has saved my bacon many times. So
there you go.
But I mean, we're simulcasting this, right? If that's what you want to call it, and just trying it, seeing how it goes. Roy is here on the 52 Qs podcast, and I'm over on Sync Gems,
and Dave's on Sync Gems. I'm super excited, to be honest. Like, we've been trying to coordinate this for a while, and it's happening for real.
For real,
and
we're here.
I'm so grateful. Like, we're literally in different parts of completely different parts of the world in completely different times. It's your early morning. It's my late evening. I guess
you're 13 hours ahead. I had to do the math to the point where I just didn't even. I thought you were on the West Coast, and I'm like, okay, what about this time? What about this time? And you're like, yeah, that works for me. And then when it actually came time, I'm like, oh, wait, that's like the middle of my night. I can't do that. So, and I appreciate you. And I just want to say I'm a huge fan of your podcast.
Oh my God.
Huge fan.
That's crazy. That's crazy to me still to hear like people on your level saying stuff like that to me, because I really feel like I'm just getting started, and it's just amazing to see that it's
Here's what
affecting
really
people.
drew me to your podcast. First of all, it's just authentic. It's like real. There's no veneer, and this is something we were talking before we started. There's no like veneer of like click funnels and marketing. You're not trying to like sell anything, right? You're just having like super real conversations with real people, being honest and genuine about the industry. And I think that authentic voice is really, really valuable. And I love your vibe, just kind of your flow. I geek. It makes me smile, and I geek out every time I hear wah, wah, wah in the background.
Ba-ba-bam.
That little
Yeah,
detail. I audibly laugh every single time. Don't stop it. Don't stop doing stuff like that, man.
oh my God, that's my dumb humor. So funny thing. I used to beatbox for a living. So I used to make these noises and sounds, and like at some point, I kind of started making fun of the sounds that I'm making. So it's just it's just like I'm making fun of the sounds of the farts that I'm trying to make out of of my
Right.
mouth, the sounds that I'm trying to produce. I'm just like taking it to a whole new level, where I'm literally doing a parody about something that I used to be. Yeah.
So that little club horn is part of that.
Yeah, yeah.
I,
I mean, like there are people who can do a really good one. I can't pull it off right now, but it's just like people can do anything basically out of their mouth these days. It's crazy.
Yeah, and so yeah, that makes me chuckle. And some really fantastic interviews. One was with that I remember most. The one that really sticks out is the one with Yella Ditmar, and Yella is
Oh
going to
man,
be on my podcast. And
hell yeah.
the reason I was like, man, yeah, I need to have Yella on my show is because I listened to your interview, and he was super gracious and everything. So big fan, really.
Amazing dude. Shout out if
Yeah,
you're listening to it.
big
Yeah.
shout out.
Yeah, he's
And
amazing.
so, tell me about like what is life like as a professional beatboxer? How did that come about, and how do you find gigs beatboxing?
Mm. So I kind of forced it. So when I got out of the army at 21, in Israel we all have to do it, as some know. Um, and yeah, I grew up in Israel, and then after the army, I got the hell out of Israel because I knew that it's not the place for me. Um, Reason is pretty obvious, I feel like, but let's not get into that. But I feel
Yeah.
like I went to Australia, and I knew I wanted to do something with music. I've been playing music all my life. I've been immersed in music my whole life, and I didn't know what. I thought I would be maybe a singer songwriter. At the time, also my voice was even less good than it is right now. Like my voice is okay. I'm a vocalist, but it wasn't amazing. But as I was running out of money in Australia, I discovered that I can beatbox,
Mm.
and I started doing it into an amp, and I thought that I was great, that I was dope, but it just like it wasn't. I wasn't very good in the beginning, but people were gracious enough to give me $5 the first time I went and did it in the street. And then I was like, damn, like I can actually make money doing this shit. And so I went on to the YouTubes, and I learned it. I learned it every day, all day. Basically, that's all I did. I just learned to beatbox. And after a few months, I started making like hundreds of dollars on the street, beatboxing every weekend in Byron Bay in Australia. And it was just such a crazy experience. And then from there, I went back to Israel when I completely ran out of money after about a year. Went back to Israel, and a bunch of gigs came. And like funny secret, I was in a big show, on a big talent show and stuff like that. And then it just like kind of went by itself. I got a lot of gig. I got a looper, did that live thing for a while, until it was just like until I was just like, I'm done with that. I gotta start doing something else with myself. And then rapping came pretty naturally to me. So from beatboxing, from being around people who want to rap to my beats all the time, I just started rapping. It was like, and I was listening to rap all the time. So yeah, Andre 3000, Kendrick Lamar, all these like people who I grew up listening are now in my head already baked. So I can just like verbalize what I heard. And it was so interesting because it happened so fast. And then I just started producing my own beats, and it just like gradually, as you can understand.
Yeah, I grew up as a drummer. Like, took 11 years old. I started playing drums and percussion in band and all of that. And I know how being a percussionist and a drummer has impacted my composing self, and especially when it comes to drums and beats and grooves. How has beatboxing translated to your composing work?
Oh my God. Like I just listened to somebody like Timbaland. Like I'm very inspired by somebody like him, and I'm actually working with one of his proteges now.
Mm.
So like with one of the people he took under his wing, and we're doing an album for Universal. And uh, um, it's like the fact that he uses his mouth for to start his beats was a huge thing for me, because I know that I can make really dope sounds out of my mouth. And if I can repeat them and reproduce them in a DAW, then, well, that gives me an extra, like an edge. And another funny thing is beatboxing is so cool still till this day. Like it's a tool of communication for me. Sometimes when I go to jams or something like that, like everybody would pick up the guitar or something like that, which I would, but yeah, because I'm a jazz guitar player, but initially, but uh, um, and just going out there and beatboxing, it's just like it's a different form of communication. So it's still till this day, it's like kind of a nice party trick, and I also use it to create actually like some percussion sounds and some of the things you hear in the weird things you hear in my tracks. It's just like muffled beatboxing. Like it's just it creates something. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm super happy I was into.
Man, you should. I don't. Earlier we were talking about just not going all like business in this
Yeah,
space, with the podcast and everything. You're not
yeah.
here to necessarily sell
Mm.
something. But I'd be interested in a little sample pack of
Oh, okay.
some beatboxing samples, man.
Wow. Wow. That can be something. Sheesh. You know what? Challenge accepted.
Do
Because
it,
I
make do
have
do.
so I have a bunch of vocals that I've and that I use for sound design, that I use for myself. But you know what? If people hit me up from your podcast that they want a sample pack, I'll funnel them.
Dude, man, yeah, come get into my click funnel.
Yeah.
Man, I
I'm
think
gonna
it'd be
funnel
great.
you
I mean,
guys.
because I can beatbox passably just because I'm thinking as a drummer, but like dudes that can actually beatbox like for real as an instrument, I have mad respect for, and I've used some beatbox samples. Like Logic has a really decent actually kind of mouth vocalization patch, but some very good, convincing beatbox. Either both one shots and loops. Man, I jump in your funnel for that, Roy.
Okay, okay. That's what's up. I mean, like, it probably won't be as much beatboxing as it would be just like crazy shit I can produce with my throat,
Yeah,
like different types of just like throat singing and different. I can do a bunch of just like a bunch of overtone stuff and cool things that I learned on the journey. Um, yeah. So
let's make it happen, man.
it's taken them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll send you something. I'll send you something.
Oh yeah, do that. Yeah, we can split some writer share. That'd be
Hell yeah.
dope, as the kids say.
And that would slap. But you know
that would
what?
that would slap. Yes.
I want to ask you. So you're also, I mean, you probably by this point you have thousands of cues, right? Like, or something like
I'm
that.
actually approaching 1,000 cues as far as like published
Amazing.
cues. Yep.
And now you're moving into the publisher side. Is that correct?
Yep, that
Can we
is
talk
correct.
about this?
Almost, it's just organically happening. Yeah.
Wow. Because of the group that is the kind of community that you've created around what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an extension of what's kind of going on at 52 Qs, which is the community that started out as a Facebook group, and then I kind of got into a Patreon, and I'm like, you know what, there's more here, connecting, creating a community of like-minded composers who are all like production music focused. And so that's what like our different like subscription tiers. And again, I'm not subscribe, right? But
I'll send you a sample of the if you want. Like,
oh my gosh, that would make that's gonna be my new text tone, dude. I get a text from Roy. But
Careful what you wish for.
Oh, hey, dude, challenge accepted. But there were two things that I noticed. There are super talented composers who just needed mentoring and guidance and coaching and opportunity. And I was getting more and more requests from some of my publishers needing more kind of from me, specifically like with publishing up for CBS Sports and Discovery Channel and these kind of things. And there's just like only one of me, right? And I'm a full-time educator. I have long since believed that you can do both. You don't have to choose composer or educator. And so I've been teaching higher education since 2001 here in the U.S. Wow. And so I've been surrounded with career-minded folks for a while. And so the community, 52 Qs and the podcast and everything is an extension of that. And as the community grew, I was like, I have a publisher over here who needs more music. And I have all of these composers who are kind of there, almost there, but they need coaching. They need, mix help. They need form, structure. And so I just brought those together. And so one of the member benefits of our family plan, because we have like tiers. There's like, you can be a neighbor for this amount of money per month. Or you can be a friend and a family member. And they're specifically called neighbors, friends, and family for very specific reasons, because it's a community, right? Yeah. It's not like platinum and diamond and gold. It's not. Yeah, that's amazing. It's not like that. And so our family subscribers get access to what's called the briefing room. And so these are libraries that I have a personal relationship, publishers that I have worked with, connecting them with the composers. The publisher needs music, and I walk them through an entire mentoring process. And so we have a brief. Here's an album. Like as of this recording, we just posted a brief for the upcoming NCAA tournament. And so composers will hit me up with music, and I have a brief with references and all that other kind of stuff. And we have weekly feedback sessions, actually twice a week, where we get them on Zoom. We listen to the music. And so it's super interactive, right? It's not just send me your music and I'll give you a thumbs up and thumbs down and then take a cut of the pie, right? It's nothing like that. It's mentoring and coaching, which is how I was brought into the sync business, is when I connected up with a library and a publisher who happens to be this same publisher who kind of went all in on the briefing room, paired me up with a fellow composer, a mentor, and walked me through the process. And to this day, I still connect with him almost 10 years later. And I still, copy him on my emails to the publisher because he's my mentor and he will always be a part of my journey. And so that's gotten me into the publishing side of things. Like, it's been super organic. It's just been, hey, let's go here because this is the next logical thing. I didn't set out to be a publisher. I didn't set out to set up publishing entities and LLCs and all of that kind of stuff. it's just happened, and it's been really, really great. It's kind of a win-win-win. It's a win for the publishers because they get music onboarded into their system that has gone through a coaching and a mentoring process. It's a win for the composers because they get access to these publishers and they get coached along the way. And it's a win for me because I can't stop teaching.
Yeah.
And the publishers often will cut me into their publishing share. And so, yeah, I hope that it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Feels like a pitch. I promise you, I'm not trying to like pitch anything here, but that's
Don't press on
what's
the
gotten
link,
me
guys.
in.
Don't
Yeah,
press on the link in the description. Do not
yeah, don't
press
do it. It's going to be
And
there.
do not become a family member of this piece of. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my
sorry, I
gosh.
don't know. I think you don't cuss on your podcast. I'm
I'll
sorry.
bleep it. I'll bleep
you should,
it out,
you,
man.
you should bleep it.
I'll bleep it. I'll reverse it to bleep us. Oh my gosh! Please send
my
me
God.
that link every time.
You
every
got it
time-
already. I've done it like 15 times.
Every time you swear, I'm gonna put that. on there.
Please.
No, you be you, man. It's
Give me the
authentic.
first one though. Give me the first one, and then next time I say it, just like pam me. But I got a question because you're saying you have to teach, but it feels like you have a fire in you to do most of the things you do. Two things. This question goes to two places. First of all, how after so many years in music, how do you keep that fire burning? That's the first question. And second of all, let's say you didn't have to teach. What would that mean for you?
Okay, I'll answer the first one. How do I keep the fire? I'm a lifelong learner. I'm always learning. You look at my YouTube history, and it's like tutorial videos and like marketing videos and videos on entrepreneurship and all of that. And so, not in a hustly, funnily kind of way. You know what I mean? Even though I've read those books, but I don't like being in funnels, so I don't like funneling people. You just gotta love learning. And that it keeps it sounds super cliche, but it keeps it fresh. It keeps it interesting, and it's never boring. And I just love people. I love giving knowledge. When we have folks who have come through the briefing room, and we've put out an album up to a publisher, and one of those cues from the briefing room that I personally kind of Sherpa'd up the mountain gets air, I get as stoked and excited, and that little kind of moment like, oh my God, this is happening. I get as excited as if it were my own, and that's how I know it's mine to do, because that never gets old. That never goes away. The fact that I can sit on a Zoom session with a group of 6 folks at 7 in the morning, right? Because one of them's in Australia, one of them's in France, the other one's in Las Vegas, and this is the time that works for everybody. And if it gets canceled, I'm like, oh, not that it's been canceled, but if it were to get canceled, I would be disappointed. And that's how I know it's mine to do.
Wow.
Now, when I stepped back from being a drum instructor and somebody would cancel their lesson, and I realized I felt relieved that I didn't have to teach that drum set lesson. That's how I knew it wasn't mine to do. There's somebody out there whose passion is teaching drum set, and let them do it. And the student deserves that. The student deserves somebody who is like crazy. They would be upset if you canceled. And so that's how I know it's mine. So keeping the passion, lifelong learning, and figuring out what's yours to do and what's not yours to do.
But okay, so let me just backtrack this. Do you feel like you were? Did you always have like a knack for this? Did you always know when to move on? Did you always have that awareness within yourself? How did you think you developed that?
As far as like this is something I need to stop doing because it's just not mine to do anymore.
I mean, just like you were talking about, and how would you know? Yeah, I mean, it seems like you are talking from an awareness, like you know what is amazing and how to elevate that. And I would guess that it translates to your relationships, to your marriage, to all these things. And what I'm asking for is just like, and I haven't heard you talk about it, so maybe that would be cool to just like, has there been any point in your life where you feel like this kind of started or clicked or came from for you? Because
Hmm.
yeah, because not a lot of people who come on the podcast, on my podcast, get five figure placements weekly or monthly, and they're still like, all right, cool, next one, you know what?
Yeah.
And it sounds like you have this stoke about you, that kind of keeps the fire, that keeps you young too.
Yeah,
So
well, I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah. I just turned 50, and so
yeah,
things are starting to like starting to break on my body. That's fine though. That's all good. As long as I keep my
same, and I'm
beard, I'll be
30.
happy.
Yeah.
Uh, Man, that's a really good question. I don't think anybody's asked that before. I think it starts with kind of an awareness, and just like what is making you happy. Like, are you happy? Are you enjoying this? Like,
Mm.
do I enjoy, like, there are two main parts, things in my world in the last 15 to 20 years that were at one point huge in my life. That I realized this isn't mine to do. One is being a drum set instructor, like teaching drum set. Been playing drums since sixth grade, all of that. And it was a moment. I know exactly, like, I don't know the day, but I know that I had a student here in Orlando. They canceled their lesson, and I was glad they canceled.
Mm.
That's when I was like, oh, whoa, whoa, what's up with that? That's when I knew I needed to step back. I had been feeling the kind of low grade, for lack of a better word, resentment towards it, right? It's just been, it's just kind of simmering under the surface, and I've just been kind of ignoring it because the money's good. You get 50, 60 bucks to sit and watch a 12-year-old have the same drum set lesson week after week because they don't practice and their parents are in the car texting or whatever. That's fine. But the money was decent, but I wasn't happy. I just wasn't enjoying it. I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
The other thing, the other part was, as a drummer, one of the big identifiers that I had was I was a theater musician. I loved playing theater. I love theater. I still love, listening to show tunes and all of that stuff. Love it, love it, love it. Love musicals, everything. And so I did a ton of theater work and had been doing theater work since like 1994. I think that was my first live theater gig. Actually, probably earlier than that. Anyway, that's not important. But it had been a huge part of my identity. And moving to Florida really shifted a bunch of stuff because in Florida, instead of being a drummer percussionist who composed in Florida, because when I started teaching at Full Sail, I was a composer who is now a drummer. And so getting back into alignment, the thing that really sparked me creatively as a kid in middle school, which was like the Back to the Future soundtrack, Alan Silvestri. Yep, that's who I wanted to be. But I was a really good drummer, and it was so easy that I never had to work for it, really. And so I just coasted, man, just coasted. And if we're being honest, a little lazy. That's fine. I applied to one school, and I got in, and that's what I wanted to do. So coming to Florida, I was in a theater. I was in a tech rehearsal. And for anybody who does theater, there are a series of rehearsals that happen leaning up to the show itself. They are like the sits probe where everybody gets down. Then there's tech night. And what tech night is when everybody is there, usually in costume, and they're going from cue to cue. They're working on lighting, cues, and all this kind of stuff. It is a long night. It's like 6 hours. And I remember I'm sitting there with my drums. They're really nice drums. I've got like my laptop up next to me because I'm cueing like timpani and glockenspiel cues on a little keyboard because I am not going to drag a glockenspiel to a gig. And I just remember sitting in the pit again, just like with that drum set lesson. I could tell you where I was thinking, I don't need to be doing this. Wow. I need to be at home writing music, and this show deserves a percussionist who needs to be here, like I needed to be in the studio, and I just wasn't happy. I wasn't happy, and when I got a call, like, hey, can you do this show? I was like, yes, I can, because the part of my brain that says, this is who you are, Dave, this is your identity, and if you say no, you'll never get another show again. But I just wasn't happy. So I think finding what you enjoy. And if you enjoy, and I've said this before, if you enjoyed having written more than writing, then you're not going to be happy in this industry. You have to enjoy the process. And like, I enjoy students. I enjoy talking about composition. I enjoy talking about production music. I enjoy making production music. And that's how I know it's mine to do. That was super long-winded, but I hope we got to the heart of your question there.
Yeah, I feel the heart of my question is the heart of the answer is identity, right? Like it
Mm,
revolves around identity, and that's what I felt. I felt the same. Like even I was teaching guitar for a while. It made me some money in my teens, and yeah, it was I had a similar feeling where I didn't want to do it as much at a certain point, um, and. Yeah, I totally feel it, and I think I told you before, as I'm going through a transition right now in my life, so it really relates. It relates to what you're saying, and you know, being able to everyone that I knew me as Roy the beatboxer,
mm,
right? Which it kind of sucked, right? Because it just like it anchored me to what I know I should be moving from, right?
mm,
And everybody who introduces me is like, oh, this is my friend Roy. He's a dope beatboxer. You should go say hi to him. And then getting also more kind of pulled into that world, but then like not wanting, so it creates more resentment in the end of the day. Like not I would say, yeah, it can create resentment if you keep on doing it. But if you know, like you get to a point where you know you don't want to do it, how did I know that I didn't want to beatbox for like for life's sake, or if this is
hmm
even the right thing to say, was when I got to New York. And I have already moved away from beatboxing, but then like randomly on the street in the second day in New York, I met the people, all the people basically who I used to watch YouTubes of.
mm,
So I just like, and they invited me to an event they were throwing. So it was like it all went to a place where it's drawing me back again, but without attachment. So I was able to make friends with all these idols I had without any connection to beatboxing, to what I used to do. And to me that was kind of the last nail in the coffin, where one of my best friends to date is a three-time world champion beatboxer, and I spent my first Christmas that I've ever done in her home with her family, and it's just like it came full circle. But for that to happen, I had to really understand that this is not who I am
mm.
anymore.
Yep.
And that's the hardest thing. And, you know, like you're speaking, a lot of the people we are speaking to are people who have part time jobs, who
Yep.
do this thing. And I feel like it's totally honorable as long as you're feeling like you're on the path. And, you know, like I have the same conversation with my girlfriend. She wants to quit her job currently. Hopefully your boss doesn't listen to
Oh,
this, but
whoops,
I don't think she
spoilers.
does. I don't think she does. But you know, like I'm telling her, you know, like if you feel like this aligns with what you are here to do, then I really believe that it will draw you to the right place. You know, that there needs to be a certain precaution. There needs to be Tim Ferriss calls it fear setting, right?
Mm,
Like so for whoever doesn't know, Tim Ferriss is an amazing dude. Wrote the 4 Hour Work Week, and he has the most inspiration. Like I love his podcast so much. Um, Such a smart and humble dude, and he does a thing called fear setting. Sorry,
hmm
it's from the Stoics. It's basically like an exercise that I think that Marcus Aurelius does, which he basically tells himself all the worst things that can happen. Let's say you have a fear, like a horrible fear of performance.
mm,
So you ask yourself, okay, what are the worst things that can happen to me in a show? Okay, people can throw tomatoes at me, right? Like that's the worst thing that can happen. Like somebody throws a
right.
beer on stage. Okay, what? And then like really understanding the repercussion of that, and then understanding what you would do if that would happen. I mean, like if somebody would throw a tomato at me, I would probably turn around and walk out of the stage. I'd look for the exit.
Hmm.
But just like understanding the problem like you understand the solution, a lot of the times it can take a lot of the stress off.
That's right.
And that's what I figured out for myself. That's why I live in Bali, not only because it's I can surf here and I have sun all year long and I
Mhm.
can go to the beach whenever I want. Not only because of that, that was the main reason. That was my dream since I'm a child basically. But it's way more affordable to me, and it makes me able to save up and to build a studio and to do these things that I've dreamed of for less.
Mhm.
And it's like there and the last thing that I would say with my long-winded answer was that the 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 thing that people don't realize, that I wish, that if there's one thing that I want people to take from what I say and what you say, is that you always have a choice. You're not a slave. Like, we're
Mhm.
not in slavery days. It's done. It's behind us. We are free people. And if you're listening to this and you have the technology to listen to this, you probably have some sort of a choice. You may be $50,000 in debt, but you still have a choice. So, I mean, like, the thing that went through my mind was, I can go and do the New York hustle. I've done that. I can stay in the States. I can do all these things, but I can actually choose my battles more wisely and then get to do as much music as I want.
Yeah.
And a few years down the line, I'm sure I'm going to be able to kick it with you for a few months in Florida. But that's the battle that I chose.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
I'm so with you. And I think it's really important to talk about these. I mean, you notice we haven't talked about like, how do you structure your beats? We haven't talked about form, and we
Sting.
haven't.
Gotta
Yeah,
add a sting.
you got to have your buttons. Yep, you got to end on time, right? We haven't talked about any of that because, and there are plenty of channels in podcasts that get there, but for me, I want to share the larger picture. Like, what is it about? How do you exist in doing this? Like, how do you exist as a production music composer or a creative or just a human trying to pursue something that is not that easy and not
Yeah.
everybody has the stomach for, right? How do you just maintain a quality of life, And so at the end of the day, I've I've never regretted saying no to something that wasn't mine to do, but
Mm.
I have 100% regretted saying yes to something that I knew wasn't mine to do. 100%. Be sure to tune in next week for part 2 of this interview with Roy. And the reason it's split up into 2 parts, it was just a really long interview and so many good things. And part 2 is going to transition into a little bit more of some philosophical areas, talking about personal evolution, healthy approach to goals, the roles of relationship and communication in the industry, and the real value of authenticity in this business. So you want to tune in for part 2, and let me know what you think about kind of splitting the interview in 2. And I try to keep the podcast episodes between 45 minutes and an hour or so. And so rolling in of like an hour and a half, an hour and 45-minute episode by the time we put intros, and that felt a little heavy. And there was just so much good stuff with Roy that I didn't want to cut it. So tune in for part 2 next week and let me know your thoughts in the comments. So we are going to take a really quick break, and when we return, we are going to take a listen to Light As A Feta, which is my final European dramedy cue. Every week I talk about how this episode and the podcast and the community, the channel, would not be possible without the amazing support of our family, friends, and neighbors, subscribers of 52 Qs, who do pay their actual real-life money to keep all of this going. And in addition to being thriving members of the community, as well as supporting me and Shannon and everything that we're doing here, they also receive extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, hundreds and hundreds of hours of video archives, weekly cue breakdowns, production music almanac, living ebook, and the opportunities to submit to real music libraries. Now, it's free to join 52Qs. You can just go to 52qs.com and sign up, be a member of the community. We would love to have you. It will always be free to join the community. But if you've been watching, or maybe this is your first time, but if you're wondering, is there a way to kind of level up my production music skills in the industry, meeting like-minded, super friendly, very generous composers, then why don't you think about subscribing? Memberships start at around $4 a month, and we would love to have you. Again, that's 52qs.com. So that was Light As A Feta, and that's the final European dramedy cue. And I figured that it would encompass a little bit more. It wasn't just French, it wasn't just Greek, it wasn't just Italian. I kind of wanted to mush them all together, and it's a little bittersweet. On one hand, I'm gonna miss, these textures and these sounds, and on the other hand, I'm not gonna miss finding new ways to make my melodica sound like an accordion or trying to coax tremolos out of a ukulele. So I'm very happy to kind of put that to bed and move on. But for you family and friends subscribers, you can check out a complete cue breakdown of Light As A Feta. It is right now in the cue breakdown section, including the sounds and the harmonic choices that I made, where those chords came from, and what it sounds like when you throw a B3 rotator cab on a melodica. So that is currently available in the cue breakdowns for the family and friends subscribers. And like I said, a huge thanks to the family, friends, and neighbor subscribers who really do keep all of this going. Please know that I love and appreciate all of you. And if you're watching this or listening to this, and whether you're a subscriber to the community or not, if you found this helpful and if you got value out of that, you can help return that value by either sharing this with somebody you know, liking it. Go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening on your podcast app, maybe give it a thumbs up or 5 stars or however it does, like in some of these apps. But I know that I listen through Apple Podcast, and leaving a review in Apple Podcast is super important. It helps me out. And so if you're unable to support the channel financially through a subscription, you can help pay that forward by just liking and subscribing and sharing. It really does help folks just like you find the channel, find the podcast, and even more, find the community. So we would be very appreciative if you would consider doing that for us. But again, that's going to do it for me this week. Next week, we have part 2 of the interview with Roy. And I forgot to mention this earlier, but we're going to have links to the Sync Gems podcast in the description below. Regardless, you should go subscribe. What Roy's doing over there with that podcast is really, really good and a real inspiration. But that's going to do it for me for week 20 of 2024. I hope that you've had a good week, and I look forward to hearing amazing things from your week 21. Because remember, I know, trust, and believe that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, peace. The 52 Qs podcast is copyright 2024 818 Studios, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used with permission and for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the community or becoming a member subscriber of 52 Qs, head over to 52qs.com.